Broadcasting from Orchard Park, New York,
in Boca Raton, Florida,
it's the Freight 360 podcast. From freight broker sales tips to sports talk, this podcast is all about helping you grow as a freight broker. We're your hosts, Nate Cross
and Benjamin Kowalski.
Let's talk freight. Welcome back, Freight 360 community. It's episode 295 of the Freight 360 podcast. As always, if you are looking for all of our content or any specific content, go right to our website, freight360.net. We've got a searchable library in there. Our YouTube channel also is a great way to find. We've got all kinds of different, like, what do they call them? Like playlists, right? With like some sales stuff, the Final Mile Q&A, the full length podcast, etc. Freight Broker Basics course for an educational option. It's great training for your team. We've even white labeled it for certain companies by customizing what they want their folks to see or not see for that matter. And share it with your friends. Help the movement keep on growing. Ben, what's happening, man? How we doing?
Doing well, man. It's getting pretty hot down here. Last couple of days, dude. Like, high's supposed to be like 86 normal. It's been like 95, 96. I had tennis last night. Oh my God. It was horrendous. I can't remember last time I was that hot, that tired.
It's actually like surprisingly not good weather and well, I don't know if I should say surprisingly, but like everyone here is complaining about when are we going to get 70-degree weather. We had a bit of a nice warm stretch, kind of felt like an early summer, and it's like been in the 50s and 40s and rainy this month. It's like April weather but in May right now. But anyway, today's Josh Allen's birthday. It's May 21st as we record, so happy 29th birthday, JA number 17. Anything? What up? Sports? Did you watch the PGA Championship?
I did. It was pretty good. Did you watch it?
I had drill, so not total. I caught a little bit here and there. I literally had drill Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so the entire tournament. Saw that Scheffler won. Here's something interesting though, because I'm in a Monday night men's golf league, and one of the guys that I was playing against, he's like, "Man, I love my driver." We're all asking like, "What is it?" Blah blah blah. He's like, "You can hit it, open face, closed face, straight on." He goes, "It's like self-correcting." He goes, "Scotty Scheffler, they literally pulled it from him at the PGA Championship." And I was like, "What?" I didn't realize, like, apparently it's like there are like 50 different. This could be totally wrong, but what the guy was telling me is that like in these big tournaments, when they go around and like check people's clubs, like on average, like 50 golfers get at least a single club pulled from their bag by the inspectors or whoever's in charge of it because it doesn't meet the PGA specs.
Huh.
So I don't know if there's any accuracy to that, but apparently,
Scotty Scheffler confirms use of backup driver like Rory after the originals, uses replacement driver en route to PA Championship win. His driver failed testing. I wonder what kind of driver it was.
I don't know, but when he was telling me this, my first thought was like, where do I get one of those?
That's where my brain went.
What's funny? I've been using my old driver the last like year and a half. Like I got this driver legitimately in 2007. I bought a new one like 5 years ago, and I think it might have been last year that like the club head or the head of it snapped off, and I was like, I'll just go back to my old one. And I'm like, man, Old Faithful. I hit it consistently, so I just haven't gone and got another driver. I'm using my old R5, so yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why. I was thinking about that last night for some reason. Just like when I got my golf clubs. I mean, I don't play nearly as frequently, so like I haven't replaced them in probably 6 or 7 years. And I was thinking about that last night for some weird reason. I'm like, yeah, my driver I got when I worked at TQL. Like that's how long I've had that driver. But to your point, I'm like, I'm consistent with it, and like I would rather hit consistently than get an extra 5 or 10 yards.
Yeah, I didn't like trying to mess around. Like the one that I ended up buying, I think I bought it because when I was on my honeymoon, I rented clubs. It's like in Hawaii years ago, and I rented clubs, and the driver that I ended up buying was basically a version of the one that I rented, and I really liked it. But it has like all the weights on it, and you could like slide them back and forth to like adjust draw, fade, and elevation and all that stuff. And I'm like, Couldn't figure it out. I don't golf enough. Like I literally golf 9 holes once a week, for a few months in the summer, and that's about it. So, but anyway, that was the big sports thing. News. I feel like there's just a lot going on in the freight world. We got
Yeah,
like
what do you got?
and this is kind of like you get conflicting reports because people are talking about different things, but you hear like, oh, freight volumes are down, and then you hear, oh, freight volumes are going to be up. It's the whole like whiplash effect from the tariffs. And now it's like we had uncertainty, so we had a surge of imports before this presidency came in, and then you've got tariffs go into place, so stuff is sitting in warehouses and freight volumes are down. We do have actual reports of imports through ports of LA and Long Beach. That's like busiest port area in the United States. They're down like 30% in May.
Yeah, I
April.
saw that like orders were down, like what they're expecting to come in to be down 30%. But the thing I saw like today was that as of now, they're down 14%, I think in Long Beach, 10 or 11 in LA, and they're expecting them to continue to go down. I think what nobody knew is how much of that cargo was in bonded warehouses to be released from the tariffs, because there was a huge push.
Yep.
And they call it my brain blanked, like a push forward. Like every company, to avoid the tariffs, ordered as much as they could. That some of that stuff that did hit was sitting in bonded warehouses. Now that there was the pause in the tariffs, they thought a large portion would be released, but I'm not seeing a ton of changes in rates coming out of Cali. I would have expected if it was going to be that significant, because orders are for sure down. I definitely read that there are a lot more blank sailings, meaning empty ships coming back from China over the next few weeks. For sure. I know that ocean rates coming from China into the US are up 41%. So not only are orders down, the prices to ship from China into the US is up. And tariffs, even though they're at 30 and not 145, it's your point of reference. They've never been 30% before either. So they're still higher than they've ever been, even though they're not this obscene 145. And then the third or fourth point on that, like Genlogs put this out on shipper data, they've seen Walmart, Amazon, and Target, all of their load volumes are all down. And again, if the larger stores are seeing a decrease in shipping volume, one of two things are happening. People are buying less stuff, or they're expecting people to buy less stuff, or they couldn't get enough stuff. I mean, it could be a mix of all the three, but... And then the last point I saw yesterday is consumer confidence is at its lowest point since 2023, right after the pandemic, when the entire basically global economy expected us to have a recession. So there is nothing that I could find that seems to be a silver lining in more freight coming into the country in the rest of this year.
Yeah, here's I just pulled this from Reuters. This is a good explanation of how bonded warehouses work if you're curious. So bonded warehouses, it says the U.S. has more than 1,700 bonded warehouses, which are facilities where imported goods can be held without immediate payment of customs duties such as tariffs. Such fees are only paid when the goods leave the bonded warehouse, allowing businesses to manage funds more effectively at a time of extreme trade policy volatility. So basically, these imports can come in, and
they're like in limbo. Pause.
Yeah,
it's like you don't pay a tariff until it's released. So it literally
released and cleared from customs.
Yes.
You don't have to pay the tariff. So that's why when people see huge tariff, they're like, put it in the bonded warehouse. We'll see how this shakes out. And now that's why you're seeing with tariffs coming down. I thought I saw a stat the other day that was like the number of shipments that were expected to be released out of it was like 20,000 or something like that, containers worth. Or does that sound like ballpark accurate, you think?
Sounds. I mean,
right?
I have no idea how much went in there. I know that you couldn't find one. So like all of the capacity of bonded warehouse on the West Coast was sucked up. But also East Coast ports volumes are all down. So even if those do get released, there's just a lot less stuff being purchased. And again, like it's really kind of a simple reason. Regardless of where you sit politically, like when there's uncertainty and you don't know what's going to happen, consumers buy less, even if things turn out to be good, because when you're worried about the future, you don't spend as much. And companies do the same because like you can't plan for it. So companies are like, does it make sense? Like I've heard large companies like, does it make sense to invest $2 billion over 3 years to start making something in the US? Well, what if this all disappears before the building gets built and then we can source from another country and that's a bunch of wasted money. So until anyone really, companies or people, I think, have some stability, you're going to see a lot less cargo being moved, which is not great for carriers.
Yep. Other quick headlines. And this is you can always get our newsletter at freight360.net. There's a sign up link there. 4% of truckers were found to be unlicensed. That is scary. 1 in 25 drivers did not have a valid CDL. Um,
Didn't have a valid CDL. That
yeah.
is
Oh, dude, this
insane.
is like the hot talk this week. Is like so. I'll just read you the blurb from ours. A new analysis by trucking safety expert Adam Wingfield has revealed a jarring stat. About 4% of commercial drivers on U.S. highways are operating without a valid CDL. Might sound like a small number, but an industry that moves over 70% of the nation's freight, it's a dangerous liability both in terms of road safety and public perception. Drivers behind the wheel of a 26,000 plus pound machine, often hauling hazmat or navigating congested areas with very little margin for error. It's not just about paperwork, it's about the lives, liability, and trust of public places in our industry. Deeper dive into the 2025 Road Check Week shows the issue runs even deeper. Over 56% of trucks inspected had violations, and nearly 1 in 5 were placed out of service. Combine that with 645 fatal truck crashes in Q1 alone, each estimated to cost $7.2 million. It's clear that noncompliance is both hitting both safety metrics and bottom lines. Some point to relaxing hiring standards in response to the supposed driver shortage, but critics argue that that's led to corners being cut. Tougher enforcement, especially on licensing, could tighten capacity and nudge rates upward, but it could also restore the image of truckers as skilled professionals and help keep America's highways safe. So that's a big deal, man. Like, we just finished up
It's a huge
the road
deal.
check last week, and that's the kind of stuff you find out. So
Here's
big deal. Big deal.
Here's the thing. I'll segue a brief into politics and back to this to loop it in. Is that I think Leffler really pointed out is like the FMCSA is just drastically underfunded and understaffed to try to keep up to date with all of the things they're responsible for, whether it's fraud and trucking companies or brokerages that are operating fraudulently that are being reported and they can't do anything about, to drivers driving around that don't have licenses, to what did he say? 1 in 4, 1 in 5 trucks don't meet the safety standards set out by the FMCSA. Like, I mean, by any stretch of the imagination, that government organization is an abysmal failure at what is expected of them.
The S
now,
in FMCSA is safety.
Yeah. And now you have the Secretary of Transportation I was reading Free Caviar is again,
Sean
and I don't
Duffy.
think there's anything wrong, but like makes a public statement that, we're going to pull drivers that can't speak English. Okay. Like I'm sure there's a significant amount of them maybe that need addressed, but that is nowhere close to 4% of every truck driver that doesn't have a license, or 1 in 4 trucks or 1 in 5 trucks not meeting the safety standard. It's like, hey, we're going to deal with this little small issue that seems to be really big in the news, that is like a drop of water in this giant bucket of just, I don't know, ineffectiveness. And it's like,
I also think it could be both and. Like, you can address
For
both
sure.
issues and prioritize
they're not
them.
mutually exclusive, but
Yeah.
nobody's talking about the things that we're talking about 4% of unlicensed drivers. I didn't see anywhere in mainstream news. I didn't see anything ever about 1 in 5 trucks not meeting the safety standards. It's never on the news. That's just like an accepted thing now. We're like, we're just okay with that, right? There's no need to address this. Like
Yeah.
there were 2 things in the news yesterday. A truck was stolen, like moving in a PA highway. Literally, they hijacked the truck like in a movie. Truck slowed down in front of them, Fast and Furious style, got the truck to pull over. They stole $267,000 worth of Apple products. The report said they were caught and they're facing charges now. And then there was one busted on the news yesterday. There was a guy in Fort Lauderdale, an Armenian, it said, organized crime ring, and in California, that had stolen some obscene amount of cargo from Amazon. They were also charged with, I think, I saw murder in there, kidnapping. Like, it was not a small list of crimes. And it's like, everybody knows this is happening. And I see reports in mainstream news that it's $1 billion a year. What did TIA say? Like, it is definitely more than $1 billion a year. Like, I feel like I know of people. Of all the stories I hear in a year, I could add up to more than $1 billion of just the cargo of people that have talked to us that has been stolen. Like, there's no way that number isn't way above there. Nobody's talking about any of these things. And the thing politically that bugs me about it is right now, I think, and again, I don't really follow politics that much, but I'm pretty sure they're trying to pass the next year's budget. And from what I've read, the budget is bigger than last year, has nothing allocated to increasing the size of the FMCSA or the Department of Transportation to address any of these issues. Doge was supposed to cut $2 trillion a year. I heard that number has been adjusted now to 250 billion, if that, and they're spending more. So they're spending more, the debt's going up, they're spending no money on driver safety, they're yelling about people that can't speak English, and no one's addressing the fact that like this agency gets $1 billion a year, might need 5 times that, but that's nowhere to be seen because every congressman and senator is just arguing to get whatever they can for themselves. And it's just a giant shit show still. Like they didn't change anything. It's exactly the same as it's ever been.
So here I'll segue here into something. I don't know why that made me think of like drivers doing things that they shouldn't be doing, but here's one that came across this week, and I'm curious your take on it. And I guess I would pose this as, where do you draw the line between double brokering and interlining? Interlining, for those that don't understand it, is when, let's say I'm a broker and I'm going to hire 2 different trucks to complete a shipment for me. One's going to take it part of the way, and then the second one's going to take it the rest of the way. That's, in its most basic sense, interlining. So here's what we had happen: is a load was going from California to Texas. We gave it to carrier A, and carrier A got it from California into Texas, and then for whatever reason couldn't get it to the delivery. So they hired a second carrier to then take it to its final destination without our approval. We found out about it after it happened. So I'm curious your take on it. Like, had we known about it and approved it and vetted that carrier and it was transparent, I would say that's fine. Interlining
happens all the time. I've had it happen many times. Well, here's my second question. One would be, was it pulled in the same trailer, and did they have trailer interchange insurance?
No,
my
totally
first question.
Separate equipment and everything.
So they transloaded it, put it in another trailer without you guys being able to verify that they had the proper insurance to do that. So if something would have happened, like, nobody knows if there was insurance to cover it. So that's the first.
So basically the first carrier dropped it at a depot in Austin, and the second carrier got loaded at Austin and took it to Waco.
Yeah, and it was at someone else's property nobody was aware of. So for sure, that to me is rebrokering the load or unauthorized brokering, right?
Yep.
Now, to your point, like,
so we're going to DNU the carrier, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But how do you go about, how would you make payments in that situation?
In freight, time is money and efficiency is key. That's where Levity comes in. Imagine automating your email operations to do more with less effort. Levity connects directly to your inboxes, extracting vital information from emails and attachments in real time. It seamlessly integrates with your TMS, empowering you to quote faster, build loads more efficiently, and book more freight in less time. Whether it's incoming emails from shippers or carriers, Levity's got you covered. It understands any language, any format, and even interprets non-standard formatting. Visit levity.ai today to sign up and get started.
Tired of struggling to find accurate rates and the right carriers for your freight? With DAT1, you can access more than 500 million posted loads and trucks every year. That's 3 times more capacity than any other load board. Plus, their integrated freight management system makes it easy to cover loads 24/7. They have the most trusted network of carriers, brokers, and shippers in the country. You'll get real-time rates on every lane so you know exactly how much a shipment will cost before you commit to it. Plus, you get instant access to top bids from qualified carriers around the country. Get 10% off your first year of DAT1 when you visit the link in the show notes. Both of them. I would vet them.
A and
B.
It's on you to pay carrier B, or do you pay some to each?
Well, I would pay some to each. Probably because there's a chance that carrier A doesn't pay carrier B. Carrier B causes issues with the receiver that you then have to resolve later. Now, again, I'm dealing with a few of those right now with some attorneys. Like, where things happen and like at the end of the day, like it's not like it's going to go to court for a few $100s or a few grand, but like that second carrier, if they deliver the load and carrier A doesn't pay carrier B, they can cause you enough problems to basically make you pay that second carrier, which
Yep.
means you're out that money. So that's why I would chop it in half and pay them both. Now, my last thought was like, again, for anyone out there on how this should happen, if carrier A has an issue and needs another carrier to take it to delivery, the carrier should communicate that to the broker. If they've got another carrier, great. Broker's gonna be like, great, you already have an option. That's fantastic. I don't have to find one. Send me the MC. I'm gonna check trailer interchange insurance. Need to verify where it's going to be transloaded to make sure it's one, insured to transition it from one to the other. And then two, to make sure carrier B has the right insurance should something happen at delivery, right? And if all those things are okay, there's no problem. Both carriers get paid. There's no issue, right? Now, the only caveat would have been had that second driver been like temporarily leased on to carrier A. Now it's technically one carrier, and in that
so
scenario,
here's
you
what
don't
they
need
to-
to know about it technically.
Here's what they told us before we figured it out. They told us, "Hey, I'm going to take it here. I've got another driver that's going to finish it." They gave us the impression that they had another driver in their fleet that was going to do it.
Yes.
And the reality is that's not what happened.
Right.
So for those reasons, I'm saying DNU the carrier because of their mishandling of the situation. So
Agreed.
Interesting. You got any crazy stories going on this week on your end?
Really, to be honest. I mean, one or two that might turn into a pretty good story for a later episode I'm in the middle of. One is a similar scenario where carrier double brokered a load, didn't pay the second carrier from like months ago, and then one of the two infamous companies that like represent those carriers going after a shipper, trying to say that like the shipper owes them the money. And I'm currently in a back and forth with that counsel as to why I think they're incorrect. As of yesterday, I asked them for the cases that they said they had precedents that they could cite. And I dug into it, and the FMCSA's guidance is every party in a transaction is responsible for vetting who they do business with. So just because a carrier books a load with a fraudulent broker doesn't mean all of a sudden they can throw their hands up and go, okay, broker, now you pay me too, or go after my shipper to pay them. They have a responsibility as a business owner and under FMCSA guidance to vet the broker that gave them the load, which didn't happen. The second thing that didn't happen is our shipper didn't have any agreement or contract with that carrier. And I think the term is privity, which is some legal term for like having a direct agreement between that carrier and the customer, which they didn't have. The third is, as a broker, we vetted that carrier that double brokered the load. They were legitimate. Their FMCSA was in good standing. They had the right authority. Their equipment was listed on the insurance. There were no freight guard reports and no alerts anywhere in the industry. So we did our due diligence, vetted that carrier correctly. Just because that carrier committed the crime, right, of double brokering the load, stealing the money and not paying them, doesn't mean we're responsible. And that was the first point I made to the attorneys. I was like, he said to us, well, we can't find them, so the only people we can reach are you and the shipper. And I argued back and I went, you have a due diligence to find the person responsible, not just to threaten lawsuits at anybody you can find email addresses for. That's the criminal. We did what we were supposed to. It's your job to go find them. Here's the bank account we wired. Here's their information. Go to the FMCSA. It's their responsibility to know who they gave this license to. That's not on us. Go to the government agency and find out who that is, or go to the bank and use whatever you need to find out who actually stole your money, because that's not on us, and that's certainly not on our shipper.
Yep. Wild. So development, I'll give you a couple other ones that popped up, and then we'll get into a big discussion on bids that don't go as expected. But so last week I was telling you about the credit circumvention, building a load under one company and moving it under another. So this thing has played out to be way more of a scheme than anything. So what we found out, there's like 20 loads and 4 different customers. So it's all messy. We're trying to figure out what's what. I just decided I'm going to call every single customer. So I called them all, talked to their shipping department, and found out that none of the ones that we approved ever tendered a load to us. Never had us in their system, never gave our broker a load. Every single load was for this unapproved customer. Further, we see a BOL for one of these loads that it's a load that was tendered to Uber Freight. And we're like, where does Uber Freight come in? Like, they're a brokerage. So then we find out this customer, the name of the customer is Delta Freight Solutions out of where other than Glendale, California. That's who is allegedly our customer that we denied in the first place. They are clearly a double broker. And here's what happened then is they took loads, at least a few of them we can verify at this point, very likely, I would imagine, went on the load boards, posed as a carrier, took loads, double brokered them to a guy trying to an agent in our company who, like, this guy's gone now. We got rid of him, clearly. And then he triple brokered them out. And what he's actually trying to do is, like, no one's trying to steal money. They're just all too lazy to get customers. It's like the old school version of double brokering where they're like, yeah, I'll just find someone for less. So I was like, we uncovered this like big scheme. So what we're able to do is like, we're hoping we can just fully remove ourselves from the situation and say like, hey, we should have never been involved here. Neither should have the guy that double brokered it the first time. But at a minimum, we can get all the carriers to go directly to who gave the load to us and just remove us. And ideally get them back to the original broker whose load it belonged to.
So again, do not take legal advice from either of us. We are certainly not attorneys, but an attorney I talked to about a similar situation for a client said, first question, do you have an agreement with that shipper, right? Did your agent or whatever
this guy started taking loads without having a co-broker agreement?
Exactly. And he says, well, if there's no agreement, like as the intermediary, basically you can kind of step back and let the carrier that moved the freight, now they can go at the shipper that benefited from moving the freight if there were no agreements. And he said likely they'll still maybe sue that brokerage that gave them the load, but your contingent cargo likely will cover your legal bills so that when the carrier loops you into the lawsuit at the shipper, who ultimately should pay them, or maybe the broker upstream from you, depending on how that plays out in court. Like theoretically what you're saying, I think should work based on a few instances I've worked through, but I'll be really curious to see how this one plays out for you.
Yeah, we'll get to the bottom of it. But what's hilarious is like,
keep pulling that thread and finding more shit.
I talked to this like fraudulent agent, and I'm like, dude, I've been in this business long enough to see what you're doing.
What are you doing?
I'm like,
I get it.
You legitimate. So then I got him to admit like, yeah, he fully intended to circumvent credit. His goal was to eventually move the customer back over once he got him approved. And he's like, I wasn't here long enough before you guys canned me to even do that. He goes, and I'm like, did you know any of this stuff was double brokered? He goes, yeah, I'm aware of it. And I'm like, is there any other ones that are double brokered? He's like, yeah, there's probably a few in there. And I'm like, dude, like literally, I'm like, what you did was double brokering. Technically, I'm like, so we can't be involved in that. And he's just like, he's still trying to like stick to his story that like what he's done is not bad. So I'll let you know how that pans out. Another one that popped up yesterday, I got a phone call from a brokerage in Canada. And they're like, hey, wanted to verify if you had somebody working for your brokerage that's also working for us. Our highway profile got flagged for someone logging in, or the IP address type thing. So someone's logging into 2 accounts with the same IP address. And sure as heck, man, I log into ours and I see it. And it's this girl that we fired last month. And my guess is, as she kind of saw the writing on the wall, like it was probably a couple weeks of like, this isn't working out before I finally was like, yeah, we just got to stop. We got to be done with it. My guess is she got hired on to another brokerage in the meantime, working remote as an agent, and was logging into Highway with both sets of credentials. So luckily, that brokerage, they're like, yeah, we're working with Highway just to explain the situation so it can be not presented poorly on their system. It's just an insight. Like, it's not like it's a identity alert or anything like that, but it is like, hey, why is someone logging into this brokerage and this brokerage from the same IP address on Highway? So that was an interesting one. But the real meat and potatoes of today, we're going to talk about bids that don't go as planned. So unless you got anything else, I feel like we've been negative Nancy's this entire episode.
Yeah,
So we talked. I think I briefly teased this one last week. Maybe not. I can't remember. But here's what's all happened is big project. We've got rented trailers. We've got drop trailers going on, and
I remember this one.
The agent just quits. Like, I'm done, and so we're trying to pass it off to someone else within the company.
You've seen the headlines. Freight fraud isn't going anywhere. But if you're a QuickScope customer, you're not seeing it in your business. QuickScope is a cutting-edge load-level visibility tool that stops fraud before it starts, right where it happens. Inside the transaction, no noise, just results. With unlimited usage and by far the most cost-effective product on the market, QuickScope delivers real value without the bloated price tag or platform confusion. And here's the kicker. Version 2 of QuickScope drops this summer, packed with powerful new features and AI integrations that'll make your visibility game even stronger. Sign up today and you'll be locked in at today's pricing when version 2 goes live. Stop chasing fraud. Start stopping it. Visit quickscope.com. That's QUIKSKOPE and learn more.
Because here's what we're up against is the rented trailers. I think we've got 6 right now that are rented, and each one of them is on a 90-day rental before it has to get taken back to the shop, inspected, maintenance done on it, and reissued if we choose to renew it. All right. And there's varying dates of when, some of them end this month, some of them end in July when they're up for renewal. So we've got trailers that are currently being rented that we either, pay for and don't use, or we pay for and still try to use. The other part that we're up against is we have a contract with this customer that we're required to give them a 60-day notice of cancellation before we stop doing business for them. And some people might say, well, why don't you just stop doing business with them and, say, screw it. Well, they have our trailers that are being rented. So they legally, contractually have the ability to use those trailers. So we can't just stop because we have to get the trailers back, etc. So now we're all right, we're transitioning. I got this other guy looking at, all right, how do I do these loads? Does it all make sense? Can I understand how to do it properly? So he's gonna try it out, and if he doesn't feel comfortable with it after about a month, then we'll go towards the, hey, let's find a way to get out of this within the confines of our agreement. All right. So he finds out he's, the rates that are contracted, there's thin margin on some, there's good margin on some, and there's losses on some overall. And with the previous broker that is resigning. So,
what's
he's
the net group of it? To give me an idea, if you take the losses, the break evens, and the wins, is it a net positive?
It's a net gain, but it could be healthier. So I'll just guess it might be a net 8% overall margin, which for all that work, juice ain't worth the squeeze, man.
You're
right?
losing
Which
money.
is why we're having this conversation now. Because I'm thinking a drop trailer program where we are renting equipment from a third party or staging at a customer's facility. We're coordinating all this stuff to make it happen. You should be getting 20% at least on something like that for the amount of time it takes and the cost savings to your customer overall. Because they're not having to pay detention and layover. They can literally load at their convenience and ship out every day with no, your carriers love it because there's no, they don't have to worry about sitting there for 2 hours getting loaded or unloaded.
No dwell time.
Right? They can just go in and drop a trailer and leave, or
Increased
they can
inventory space, which is
Yep.
another added benefit, where they
Yep.
can just leave cargo in the trailers preloaded. It's not taking up space in their staging area, which allows them to run more efficiently, keep more inventory at lower cost. Like there's a lot of benefits to this, to the shipper.
Yeah. So the reality is like, yeah, we can spend some more time, because I think the person that resigned, and I spent a significant amount of time with them going through these lanes previously because she had a tough time. She had a tough time on the carrier negotiation side, like not so like sourcing and finding the right price point with these carriers. Because if you think about it, if I'm a if as a broker I've got an empty trailer to move and I can go to a power only carrier and say, hey, I want this trailer moved from here to here. You can use it for whatever you want for the next 10 days. Just make sure it gets dropped off there. 90% of the time, you can typically find a carrier to do that for free, right? Or a very, very, very little cost, right? We've got other brokers in our company that move.
I have carriers I've worked with that do that.
At no cost. The carrier will move it for free. And it's like really, really high margin for that reason. But in this case, she was having a tough time sourcing power only carriers to move it because she just didn't know how to use the tools effectively. And on top of that, she's paying them market rate for full truckload when it should be,
an empty trailer
almost
that they can use.
Maybe pay them $50 or $100, right? So that's the one side of it. Which if you fix all that with we have a seasoned guy now who came up through a big top 10 brokerage, well trained.
So that should take the margins from 8 to 25, give or take.
No, so that still won't get us to where I think it should be. Because market conditions, she quoted it too thin too. So like I went through the bid process with her and I was like, hey, I'd be aiming for 20% margin on this stuff. And I think she bid it like her estimation was like 12% is what she went in at. And she got, naturally she got awarded all of their freight, right?
Yeah.
Like, so luckily, I guess that begs the question, what do you do in a situation when you bid low and rates are higher than what you expected? That's kind of the general discussion we can have today. And I will preface with this specific customer, they did say, hey, we prefer to be with a sole provider who can assist us and has the bandwidth, in case someone's sick or is out. They've got a team and infrastructure to be able to manage this project solely, because one point of contact for us keeps it simple. We're happy to do a revisit the pricing
and
annually.
Invoicing issues are cheaper for them.
We have invoicing singular, right? And there's a clause in there that states if there's any anything, I forget the verbiage, but there's a clause in the contract that we executed with them that states like we can do a 30-day notice of price changes if unexpected things happen, such as market changes, et cetera. Like we have the ability to renegotiate throughout the year under this clause.
Yes.
But what you have to do then is like, how do you approach that customer and have that conversation? Because that's what needs to happen, and that is happening today.
Let's go back a step.
Yep.
So to back up, right? Anytime I'm working on a bid that is of any extended period of time, like more than a quarter, I would say, if it's a 6 month to a year bid, right? I ask that question 100% of the time. Hey, the first question I always ask is, hey, is this typically standard? Have you guys been running annual bids for the past few years? Is this something you guys are doing this year? And usually the answer is no, we've been doing this way for a while. My next question is always, okay, do you, or is there a way that you've handled in the past market fluctuations where you have a big rejection rate from your carriers on a lane because something unexpected happened? Whether it's, a hurricane for a month or whatever to, changes in import tariffs, who knows? You just ask that generally like, hey, because if they've been running a year bid, the thing you almost know for sure is nobody's able to predict the rates accurately for a year. There's just too many things that can and do happen across a large number of lanes. So, and I have to do one this afternoon and I'm in the second round and I asked that question, and the one we're doing starts in July and goes all the way around. So even with RateCast, I can only go out 12 months. So even with the best tools available, I can still only predict a year from now. This doesn't start for 2 months, right? So like I'm still never going to be able to definitively guess this. And then the way I always say this, and I think it matters how you ask this and explain it, is I frame it as a benefit for them. I go, well, like, hey, like I know you guys don't want to be given a lot of loads back in any way. Like that just creates more work for your team. How have you guys handled this in the past? Like, do you have procedures? Is there a time to request rate increases? Should they occur? I just want to kind of understand how you've been doing this. Because again, if I'm going to give you a rate, I want to stand behind it for a year if possible. But in worst case scenario, like what has happened in the past? And in this one, they're like, yeah, like usually once or twice a year, we'll accept a rate request for an increase. If it's justified and we see that in the market, we will grant them most of the time. Sometimes we don't. I'm like, okay, because again, in the one I'm doing, rates drastically change from summer into winter, and it's like a flatbed one. I'm like, okay, well, like then at least I know I want to make sure I don't have to request this until the fall or in the winter when rates might drastically change to things no one knows, right? I don't know, maybe steel production in the US doubles or triples some miraculous way, and like all of the capacity gets absorbed because we don't bring it in from import. Who knows, right?
Yep.
So I kind of try to factor that in, and I always ask that up front. And the reason I ask it up front, and this is important, not only that you ask it, you write that shit down in your CRM, who you talked to, when you asked it, what they told you, so you got that date. Because if I've got to ask a request in whatever, December or November, like I can go back to that person and reference that conversation. Hey, look, we're seeing a huge change in this lane. It's up 40%. Like we can hold it for another week or so, but we just can't take this many losses for an extended period of time. Remember when I asked you this in June prior to the bid, you had said once or twice a year you do this. How can I go about that? Because when you can reference to the person that told you this, when they told you it and how they told you it, it makes this conversation a lot smoother to resolve rather than just going and sending an email like I've seen people do. Hey, I need an extra $1,000 on this lane. No matter how that customer feels about that lane, they might even know that's true. They are going to be incredibly irritated that they got an email about their bill going up. It'd be like, hey, my gas bill's $80 a month and all of a sudden my gas company sent me a $400 bill. Like, I don't care how justified that is, you're going to be angry. You got to present the context and the understanding before you ask for it, I feel.
So here's actual verbiage that we have in this contract. This is like a sub paragraph under the pricing clause, but it's in the event that there is any catastrophic occurrence, so that's like your hurricane, right? Or extreme changes to market conditions occurring prior to the annual pricing revisit, broker will provide a 30-day written notice to that these events deem an increase to be the, I won't read the whole legal but basically, like if there's an isolated incident or if there's extreme market changes, we have a 30-day we have 30 days now instead of a year. So then you got to go through and say like, how do you define extreme, right? Versus, right. Whatever. So we have to go back and look at when we did this last year. What was forecasted versus what actually.
When was it done last year?
It was like last fall because it was.
Okay, so you got about half a year left.
Yeah, well, so it's a 3-year contract with an annual pricing revisit scheduled in, then with a 30-day protective clause if there's anything extreme. So they want you to. They say, hey, we want to partner for 3 years. We want you to price in 1-year chunks, and if anything is out is way off, you have a 30-day waiting period to revisit in those extreme events, which I think is fair.
Yes.
But I also what I don't necessarily like there is that the customer pretty much has all the control in that situation, right? Like, so yeah, you feel like, we have it for 3 years, but what's to stop them from just being like, nah, not going to use you. Like, going to go with somebody else. We don't have any recourse, right? Same thing if we want to increase our rates the next year and they say, nah, I don't think so. We're going to use somebody else. No recourse.
I bet there's some recourse in there for damages, since the fact that like you're leasing trailers on their behalf. There's probably some
more than another company who just decided they didn't want to uphold their end. And we try to send them a bill, And they're like, nope. Like basically trying
What
to
did your attorney say?
What's
Did he say
that?
it was
Oh,
worth- how much was the
basically
bill?
not worth the legal fees.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, well, that's the other question. Is like, can you get it even if you win in court? Is it worth spending to get it back? Like now in this scenario, right? Like knowing they want to use one point of contact, knowing that you've got trailers all over their property, knowing that some of those trailers are likely loaded with their commodities, right? Like even if they did want to stop, there's a cost to that. In time, getting a new company in, getting it through bid, they might pay more, they might not get the same service. Like there's a lot of risk for them walking away, even though it can happen, to your point. So I wouldn't say you have no leverage. The way I would frame this back to them is, listen, we had some changeover in personnel. Like, was there a personal relationship with that agent?
Oh
and
yeah,
a
so
person
I'll
there?
tell you through what my strategy is that I think is the best practice, and we can talk through it. So, and this can apply to any bid that's not going as planned, is you don't want to go at it and just say like, our rates are too low, we need to increase them, right? It's the same way that you have a conversation with any customer about price, is you want to set the stage and give perspective as to why you are either asking for more money or why you're asking to change something, right? So, and here's the other thing.
And always do that over the phone.
She still hasn't told this customer that she's like intending that she's resigning, right? So it's like there's a whole bunch of stuff. So we need to go into it very delicately, like, hey, we're gonna lay it all out here. We're gonna explain exactly what the situation is here, and you have to admit some fault. Like this was definitely a
Take
screw up.
responsibility.
Exactly. Like, we definitely misestimated, and we can explain, like, the reality is, this individual is struggling to work independently. Really, to succeed and to develop is going to really need to be in an office setting, with oversight and supervision and guidance, and does not have that right now. And we'll take we're going to take ownership on agreeing to this situation and this contract. She takes ownership on miscalculating what the market was going to look like, with the whole goal of like, hey, we want to serve you. We want to meet the original goal, which is to have a cost efficient, single source solution for you. And then we believe we can do that. We just need to, we're just asking that we can, sharpen our pencil and revisit the pricing for this to be worth everybody's time, focus, and energy. And I think if you can go into it with that, it's a win-win for everybody. Customer still gets what they want, just at a more realistic rate, which is still cheaper than if they didn't do this altogether. They don't have to change providers, and we can actually get the pricing that we need. So we're not asking for a ton, but just enough to put us in a fair pricing level, because they're getting a deal on top of a deal right now, and they're the only one that's winning, and that's probably why they were happy to give 100% of their business to us.
And I think I'll boil that down into like first principles, 3 steps. Take responsibility for whatever it is and however you do it. Reassure them that your objective is still to fulfill the agreement and to get done what you committed to doing. And then always bring a solution to the table, ideally more than one, right? Hey, this is on us. This is why it occurred. Want to let you know, full stop, we will take responsibility. Secondly,
I want to
objective...
pause right there, because that is a principle that I love, and I always, in the Army, I use this all the time with any of my junior leaders or anyone that I'm in charge of. And I always say, when they first start, when I do like I call it a counseling. It's kind of like your, here's your expectations. I always say, if you're going to come to me with a problem, I welcome that, but I ask that you come to me with that problem, that you come to me with possible courses of action or solutions to that problem.
Well, going back a second, there's nothing that irritates me more than when someone comes to me with a problem and they're blaming everybody and taking zero responsibility. Because now I got to spend twice as much time going, is it really everyone else's fault? Did the carrier really do all this? Did they really have all the right information? Did you really ask the customer for everything you should have? Did you get everything the customer sent you to that carrier? Did you get it to him in a reasonable amount of time? You mean to tell me in this entire scenario, there's not one thing you could have done differently or more effectively the next time that would have maybe avoided this? Because I think people talk about growth mindset. Like, all that really means is when something goes wrong, you first have to look inward before outward, even if it's not just you and there were multiple people that did things. You can't change what anybody else did or are ever going to do. The only person you can ever change is yourself. And you can't learn from what went wrong unless you first look at, even if I ended up and I wasn't at fault as to why it happened, I need to learn how I could prevent that thing from screwing me next time. And I can't learn unless I look at myself and take responsibility that no matter who's at fault, what can I do differently to prevent the next person that's at fault from screwing me, right?
Yeah.
And you can't learn unless you take responsibility. So like to me, like that's your first. And also you go to a customer and you're blaming the market, carriers, them, the company you work for, this and that. They're looking at you like, so where are you on this? You're just this innocent victim that put the whole deal together and somehow you're just, sitting in the corner like, oh my God, it's everyone else's fault. People can see through that. They can sniff that bullshit out from a mile away, and they're way less likely to work with you moving forward unless you own up to it, right? And then again, your point.
What's that book with the old FBI negotiator that we talked about?
Chris Voss.
Chris
Never
Voss.
Split the Difference, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So I used to have his see if I still have his cheat sheet at my desk here. There was I do. It's like takeaways from his book. He had neutralize the negative is what he calls it. And I'm just reading this verbatim, but he uses the phrase, look, I'm an asshole. If you remember that one, basically you have to say like, look, we screwed up here. Like it legitimately neutralizes that instantly because there is no doubt in your customer's eyes that you're taking responsibility.
Correct.
Right. Whereas like if I go in and I, like you just said, if I just start giving problems, first of all, when someone comes to me, like you just said, you're like, nothing bothers me more than that, right? If someone comes to me, and I've had this happen in work situations where someone comes and just starts saying, this is screwed up or this is messed up. And that's it. I get frustrated because I'm like, my head goes right to like, what did you do wrong? And why aren't you like admitting it? Like it speaks to your character. Well, when the reality is you have to learn that skill, right?
Well, it's funny as a parent, right? The first thing I do, right, when my daughter does something and I know she did something, she knows she did something she wasn't supposed to, is I don't get upset and I calmly try to get her to do that because there's a fear, right? Like, hey, if I tell you I did something wrong, I'm going to get yelled at. I know I wasn't supposed to, you told me, right? Like my daughter knocked like 2 flower vases over in the living room the other day and my wife's like, don't move the big couch pillows in front of the TV without me because like you might knock a lamp over or something. She did it. My wife walked away when I was in the office. So I ran out and she just looked at me and I could see she for sure knew what she did was wrong. She looked at me, knew she wasn't supposed to, and whispered, like, do we have to tell mommy? Because I'm sure my wife told her like right before this happened, right?
Yep.
And I'm like, honey, it's okay. Like, I'm never going to be upset with you for admitting when you do something wrong. The important part is you understand that, you learn from it, and you don't do it again. Me yelling isn't going to help you learn. It's just going to make you scared, and you're not going to gain anything from it anyway. And it's the same thing in a business context, right? Like the customers, again, I've been yelled at from customers in this conversation, or I've called them and like, hey, like this is on me. I absolutely thought I checked this truck had this right equipment. I definitely missed this piece. I know they got rejected. I know it was an important load. And I know you probably got 6 emails and 3 phone calls yelling at you already. That is for sure on me. I've gotten literally yelled at. But I also know, even as scared as I was to make those first calls, every single time on the other end of it, when that person calmed down later that day or the next day or 2 days later, they appreciated me owning up to it and they trusted me more moving forward because they know, everyone knows everyone makes mistakes.
Yep.
Not everybody does
100% of the time. Yeah.
Is take responsibility for the shit they make mistakes for. And that is character. And that's what people look for in people they do business with. Everybody's going to screw something up. Not everybody takes responsibility. So when you do that, you set yourself apart and position yourself to work towards a solution. And like in your case, like I think that's exactly how I go about it. I think I would really think through how I frame the first person telling them they're leaving. And I think you're right, as in like, hey, I bit off more than I can chew. This is on me. I thought I was going to be able to oversee all of this. But the reality is I'm going to need more administrative support to provide the service you expect. I don't want you to get less because I made a mistake. I think the service is the most important. Customer's likely going to agree. Then it's like, well, okay, can we review this and possibly resubmit some rates and subjections so that we can give you what you're expecting in a way that doesn't collapse us? Because me trying to do all this, your service is not going to be what you expect. I can't pay one or two people to do this all day with me unless I readjust this in some way. Can I look at this, work through some suggestions, and bring them back?
Yeah, because I think you just did exactly what I'm going to describe, which is like the bottom line up front, or bluff, if you've ever heard it called that, is like, hey, we screwed up. We'd love to continue doing business with you. In order to do that, we're going to need to revisit pricing. That's your bottom line up front, right? So there's no sugarcoating it or any of that, and then you can break it down.
Not burying the lead all the way in the back, going, well, this and that, and I think like the admins and the other people using the computers, and another person might cost me like $1,000 a week, and then I got to go into the office, so like I might need like 1.5 people, and then like Pierce is going to have to deal with a little bit of insurance. Like no one wants to hear all that shit up front. They just want you to tell them directly, to your point, right up front, hey, it's probably going to cost more. I don't know what that number is. Let me see what it'll take to actually support your expectations. And can I bring that back to you for us to discuss?
Yep, precisely. So, and then, you can also talk through like, hey, I understand, like if this isn't going to work with you and we're not the right partner and we're not a good fit,
it's on me.
You understand that's on us. You taking ownership, right? But it sets the tone and the expectation that like you are there to work for them, not just take from them, right? And I think that is a key way. Yep. It's all about like, we can't tell you exactly what to say in these situations because they're all situationally dependent. But it's the overarching principles here are like going into it with a mentality of trying to reach a solution, not just take from that customer. So, and the reality is too, like if you screwed up on your pricing and you underbid, the customer might tell you to F off and you'll never haul a load.
You got to be able to accept that.
Will serve as a learning lesson for you in your career.
Here's a similar conversation that I see a lot. And this is a scenario where the broker is not at fault. The customer caused the problem, but you need to have a similar conversation, right?
Yeah.
Customers that are telling you flat out they want the cheapest truck you can find all day. Then 3 hours later, they're calling and screaming at you because the truck's not there at the exact moment they expected it, right? And they do this over and over, and it's probably one of the most common things brokers deal with, right? What I always do in that scenario is like, I'm going to pick up the phone and have a conversation, and I'm going to say, hey, listen, I understand you're frustrated this guy's a little late. Yeah, this is ridiculous. This guy was supposed to be here at 1. Like you told me he was going to be here at 1. Hey, I totally understand that. But what I do want to explain is that when I am paying the lowest price to move your shipment, which is what you asked, there are going to be scenarios, more likely than not, where the guy's going to be late. Here's why they're late. Because in order to run your freight cheaper than what a different carrier would run it for, they are booking their loads as close together as they can, which means that that last place that guy's unloading at, he was supposed to be out of there at 2 hours. He didn't do anything wrong. That facility didn't unload him for 3 hours, which made him a half an hour late to your place. The carrier's doing everything he can to meet your expectation of being the cheapest. But at the end of the day, you get good, you get cheap, or you get it fast. You get to pick 2 of the 3. And if you want cheap, he's not going to be fast, or he's going to be cheap and good, but not quick. Like there's something that has to give, and you can't scream at drivers that are trying to make your ridiculous rate work every day and then yelling at them because they can't drive faster and do things that they can't predict. They're doing the best they can to understand when they expect to get delivered and to drive there. Well, you've driven places. I'll bet you've gotten to work late a few times in your life, and it's the same route you take every day and went home because somebody got into an accident, because there were more traffic lights, because somebody was driving slow in front of you. This guy's driving 80,000 pounds down the road. Like, let's give him some grace. Let's have some understanding, and let's work towards something that makes more sense. If you need these guys here at 1, then 1, I either need a little bit more money or I got to book them earlier, right? Like, we need to work together to get you what you're looking for, because just yelling about price and then yelling you're not getting the service, isn't going to help you solve your problem either, whether it's me or another broker. Like, you can fire me today, but the next guy you get, you're going to have the same conversation with tomorrow. So like, can we work together to understand how these things affect each other? Now I usually get more business from them, and sometimes they'll give me more rate. Sometimes they just kick me out the door and I don't work with them again. But
you know what this reminds me of, and I'll wrap up with this, is we did an episode on all about how to have hard conversations. We get into more specifics, like you mentioned late pickup, right? Or, late, could be late anything, delivery, whatever. We talked about breakdowns, storm delays, just claims, anything, right? When things don't go as planned, there are definitely tactical ways that you can go about having those conversations in a manner that will not put you in a casket, metaphorically speaking, with your customer. So definitely check that one out. I think it's very, very helpful for anyone that's new, because you got to remember, with a mentality of continuous improvement, you're going to always be dealing with new situations, new scenarios, new hurdles that you're going to come across. So having the general framework of how to have those delicate conversations and not have them be abrasive, I think it's a great tool to have in your portfolio as you go on through your career. So definitely check that one out. I think this was a good discussion. I'll definitely have to keep you posted on how this all pans out, along with the other wild scenarios. So you got any other thing you want to wrap up with?
Not particularly.
All right. Final thoughts.
Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
And until next time, go Bills. That wraps up this episode of Freight 360. Check out the show notes for links to anything that we've referenced on this episode. And make sure to visit us online at freight360.net to see our entire library of episodes, videos, blogs, and more.
And make sure to check us out on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily and weekly tips and content. And if you'd like your question answered on the show, fill out the Contact Us form on our site, and we'll see you next week.